Now, Governor Brown has made it clear that she is definitely ready to go that route if she has to. If lawmakers won't vote on cap and trade, or on anything else for that matter, then she's going to use her executive power to get it done. All right, I want to bring in Maggie Vesper right now. Maggie, this is interesting because using executive power isn't exactly a rare thing for the governor to do. But in this case, it kind of is because of the complexity of this cap and trade bill.
Totally. Cap and trade is so complex. I mean, one of its amendments alone was 177 pages, and now we're talking about executive action. No one knows exactly how this is going to go. I mean, legal and political experts are kind of disagreeing on how far that reach can go. And even in her news release announcing her plans to do this, the governor really kind of appeared to be walking a line.
I will not back down. I will be taking executive action to lower our greenhouse gas emissions. That's how Governor Kate Brown laid out her plan yesterday. Not I'll pass cap and trade. I'll lower greenhouse gas emissions. She didn't say how. And our email today asking her team to elaborate hasn't gotten a response. So what does this mean? First things first, let's give credit where credit is due. Our political analyst Len Bergstein pointed this out last night on The Story.
The fundamental question, I believe, has to do with all the fossil fuels and gas tax, and that's not something that's easily handled by an executive order.
Got it.
In other words, cap and trade is notoriously complex. Now, for context, the state keeps a list of things Governor Brown has used executive power on. Most of these moves, to be blunt, are simpler. Even sweeter. Things like designating segments of the Nehalem River as state scenic waterway or keeping a commission on autism spectrum disorder going. And then some of these things are serious and sort of reactionary, declaring states of emergency, for example, after wildfires or storms. That said, Len's not the only one describing cap and trade as
it's not something that's easily handled by an executive order.
Last year, the Mail Tribune reported that for more than a year, Governor Brown and her staff had been going back and forth with reps from the Department of Environmental Quality. Internal documents obtained by the paper suggested options for the governor, like a gradually declining cap on industrial emissions and fossil fuel importers, or increasing access to public transit and promoting biking and walking. And it suggested ways to strengthen regulations on landfills to lower methane emissions. But the documents showed Governor Brown's reach wouldn't extend as far as a bill voted on by lawmakers. For instance, the Mail Tribune reported a bill could have allowed companies to invest in offsets, like preserving timber stands rather than buying allowances. The governor and her executive authority has less power to get creative and help industries make big transitions like this. She'll also have to leave some of this, says Len, to agencies like the DEQ themselves.
The question is, how does the rulemaking actually go on? And it's a very complicated thing. The governor might say, you will make a rule about the way in which our fuels will be used in Oregon, or the renewable portfolio standard. Then the executive agency has to have a series of meetings that are called rulemaking in order to actually put some flesh on that particular bone.
And oh yeah. Then there's the issue of just flat out making people mad. Truckers hate cap and trade. Their protests have been intense. Multiple analysts have said an executive order by a Democratic governor following a Republican walkout could be a prime target for lawsuits.
Sure, that last line was shocking to so many. So to that point, in a Facebook Live feed yesterday, Senate Republican leader Herman Bearsugar said if she does take executive action on this topic, she can absolutely expect a lawsuit right away.
You bet. All right, Maggie, thank you so much.